Hello and welcome to Tracy Momi Reads. I am back again with another video. Today I'm going to be discussing the book The Marriage Act by John Marrs. The Marriage Act. And this is my first book by John Marrs. And I think that he usually writes in the speculative fiction category that's what this book was as well. Okay, and for those of you who are not familiar with what that genre is, speculative fiction, I'm going to read the definition, the official definition. Speculative fiction is a genre of fiction that encompasses works in which the setting is other than the real world, involving supernatural, futuristic, or other imagined elements. So it's under the umbrella, I would say, of like sci-fi, right? But I think what makes speculative fiction a little different is that it usually looks at real world things and events and stuff that's happening and puts a spin on it, like how this can spiral out of control, what this could look like if things went too far. It's like the biggest of the conspiracies, like this could happen, it could become this thing. Even like with the cloning thing, I mean, that's not too out of the ordinary because they have, with the clone sheep and everything, but maybe the idea in a speculative fiction story would be that they're going to start cloning people, and we're not going to know who the real people are and who the fake people are, and in this particular book, there's the speculation, because I think that's where the derivative of the word speculative, what could happen with AI. There's a part of that in here if that got too out of control, right? And what the book itself is about, as you can tell from the title, The Marriage Act, there is a marriage act. We're like so many years into the future. I don't know if we're like 100. I don't know how many. I can't recall seeing that, but I do know that there were references made to, after the fall of whatever, after the last, virus that plagued the world in 2020, with a reference to the coronavirus or whatever. So there were like little things that the author would mention as if they transpired like decades ago. So this has to be far into the future. So what has happened is that, and it takes place in Britain. And that was one of the things I was confused about as to if the events that took place in the book, like in the author's mind or in this world that he created, was it happening in other countries too, or was it just in Britain? Because what they've done, the government in Britain, they have this Sanctity of Marriage Act, and it gives people benefits for being married. Like you get like tax breaks, financial benefits, you get to live in the best neighborhoods, your kids get to go to the better schools. And, maybe there could be an argument made that is already somehow true for married people, if they get married and they move to the suburbs, and sometimes the schools that are on the, that aren't in the main like district of the city or state, that are private, the kids are getting something better or whatever. But this like takes it to a whole another level. They even have these things called audites, and they are kind of like the Siris and Alexas of the world, where they are AI enabled devices. But this is the caveat, and this is where the speculative part comes in as to, is that happening now type thing. The audites are constantly listening. I mean, and everybody knows it. Like, I mean, that's the part you sign this contract that we're putting this in your house, and it's supposedly like monitoring your conversations so that it can pick up on anything that may like be a early warning sign that there's trouble in your marriage. So and sometimes it'll send affirmations out just randomly, because they also wear like watches, smart watches or whatever. You know, tell your spouse you love them today. You know, remember it takes two to communicate, you know, things like that. But if you and your partner, let's say y'all have a fight and you're like, you're so lazy, you never take out the trash, and I don't know why I married you. The audite will step in and like say something, right? And tell you that that's not the way to resolve conflict. And if you have too many of those instances, they send out what they call a relationship responder. Like there's so many levels you get to before they send somebody out to talk to you in your home, and sometimes maybe live in your home to monitor you. Because here's the thing, like single people, you're like pariahs, like in this particular story, like, you know, if you end up getting a divorce, all the benefits that you got as a married, they immediately go away. So it's recommended that you bounce back and, like, you know, very quickly go into the pool of DNA match or whatever like they do to find you somebody else. You need to get married again, because that's what they want. They want everybody married, because, and there are even like little flyers and stuff throughout the book, like this one. Wait, let me pull it up. You know, like how they say that marriage is good for, you know, society, for the economy. Married couples are healthier. You know, they're 35 less likely to suffer high blood pressure, strokes, and heart disease. Married couples take fewer sick days. They don't drain the economy's resources, and they don't rely on their benefits. Married couples live 4 to 8 years longer. You know, it's just all kind of stuff like encouraging people all these benefits of getting married, right? And a lot of them are, you know, a lot of it is BS, but I have seen some of these like statistics. If you were to Google like benefits of marriage, some of this same stuff comes up. So that's where I think sometimes speculative fiction draws the line between, I mean, it's very close, it's blurred, but it's like, could we end up going to this side, right? The thing that I really liked about the story, I mean, it was the story itself. It was a different kind of premise. You know, I don't read a whole lot of speculative fiction, but I enjoy it. Big fan of LeVar Burton Reads podcast, where he reads short speculative fiction stories, and I'm always just like, I get chills. But that may have more to do with his voice than the stories. But it's just I'm always just like so blown away when it comes to different stories that authors create. Because I've said before, I don't think that there is anything like new under the sun or totally original anymore, because the world's been spinning a long time. Even if somebody puts a different spin on it, you know, it has roots somewhere else. You could dig back. I mean, with songs and the samples, with fashions, with movies, even with books, there's like a formula there that somebody else, probably Shakespeare or somebody, created long before any of us were ever even thought of. So when you get stories that border on like pretty much like 100% creativity. I mean, maybe they're at 98%. Maybe there's 2% of this that you've kind of heard or seen somewhere else. And I feel like this book is pretty close, you know, to the way that he decided to, you know, pull the story together and mix everything and really make you feel like we could be on the cusp of something like this. You know, there's even this part where there's this famous influencer, you know, because they talk about social media and how that whole thing plays into everything. There's this popular social media influencer that has supported, you know, the Sanctity of Marriage Act, and almost always, and this is true to life in any scenario, you always are going to have some opposition to things where the government are trying to control everything, right? Because the thing that I think is so, let me get on the soapbox here for a minute and take a step back. The thing that I think is so hypocritical is that you have a lot of politicians that will say out of their mouth that they don't think the government, should be telling people what to do. But then they go and they vote a different way, or they put in laws where they are trying to do exactly that. Control what people are doing, what with their bodies, with their minds, with everything. It is just so damn frustrating and annoying, But anyway, back to the book. Whenever you have a situation where the government is controlling or trying to control everybody, you're going to have resistance. You're going to have those pockets of people that stand up and say, this is bullshit. You can't be making people get married, because this is another thing. There was one of the characters in the book. He was a older man. Him and his wife had been together for almost 40 years, well before this marriage thing came into play, right? And he was, old man. Like, I think he was probably like in his late 70s or 80s or whatever. I think they had been married about 50 years, and she died. And they were going to take away all his stuff unless he hurry up and found somebody else and got married. First of all, you've been with somebody 50 years. I would, go out on a limb here and say, you probably don't want to do that again, I'm done, because I don't know how much time I have left. I don't want to start a whole new relationship with somebody. That was the love of my life. I'm good. I've experienced love. I've experienced marriage. I'm just going to do, this solo thing and remember that person. But no, you don't have that option, because, other things could happen to you if you don't. Because this is the caveat. If you signed up for the Sanctity of Marriage Act, then you're in that for life, or bad things are going to happen to you, right? So anyway, you have this other group called the Freedom for All, where they thought that should be abolished and people shouldn't be held to that. And then you have these intrusive devices in people's houses where you can't even joke with each other or have an argument, which is what happens in relationships. And then you have these relationship responder people that come out, and they are like the one that they focused on in the story. He was a absolute textbook sociopath and a psychopath. And people like that would make decisions as to whether or not your marriage is you're violating anything under the Marriage Act, and whether or not you should get divorced and lose a lot of your benefits. So the Freedom for All group comes along, and they're like, nope, we're not having it. Power to the people, right? So there was like this kind of, back and forth with these two factions or whatever. So the thing that I didn't like about it, there were a lot of moving pieces. It took me about 3 days to finally finish this book, because at times it felt like you were reading 6 different stories. Like, I was thinking about that movie Crash. I don't know if many of you have ever seen that, but there are all these different stories taking place. This is a huge ensemble cast of actors, well-known actors and actresses. And it's not like until maybe the end that there's this culmination that you see how all their stories even tied together. And I felt like that's kind of how it was here. I mean, obviously every story in every household, it had something to do with the Sanctity of Marriage Act, but none of those characters ever cross paths or talk to each other. There may be a vague mention of their names in each other's story, but it wasn't until the very, very end of the book, the culmination at this big rally, that the people who were at the rally, heard from this one couple that, was in the book. Then they heard from the wife of this other man, and then this other lady and her daughter, because the whole time I was reading it, while I was enjoying it, I was like, what's with all these random ass stories? Are these people, do they know each other? Are they going to meet? Why are we getting all these little piecemeal things? And it wasn't until the very end that, they all they didn't even all get together. They were at an event together, but I'm just like, I don't know how I felt about that, because I just felt like I said, I was reading 6 different stories, trying to figure out, and it was the first time I've ever read a story like this. So that may be where my frustration came in, is because I was trying to make sense of it, instead of just going with the flow and just relying on the author to make it all make sense in the very end. I'm not a patient person. Those mystery books have gotten me to the point where I'm so used to getting nuggets along the way. Just imagine if you were reading a book, a mystery or suspense book, and they just told you somebody was dead. And then they just started telling you about, oh, Jenny went to work today. Bob went and worked out. And, this lady walked her dog. And it wasn't until like the last chapter that you saw how all of that made sense. You probably would lose interest midway, but I'm not a quitter. I kept going because I'm like, this has to be going somewhere. These people are going to have to connect at some point. And like I said, they did, but not really. I guess it was one of those, like there was this statement, I guess, that the author was making. I'm having an epiphany right now as I'm saying this. Maybe the point was to show how all these different people who seemingly had no connection were being affected by the same thing. Maybe that's what it was. That's what I'm going with. But anyway, like I said, it was a good story, if not a bit tedious sometimes. But if you enjoy speculative fiction or something, like sci-fi, or if you're love good conspiracy theory, or if you like stories that do focus on interpersonal relationships and show how government involvement can sometimes be to our detriment, then, I think that this book has all of those elements and more. Very good read. And at the top here it says it's a dark, immersive, speculative fiction at its very best. And like I said, I think he writes in that genre. I may have to check out some more of his books. If you have read The Marriage Act by John Marrs, what did you think? Let me know if I missed anything, or what you think the point of like having all of those separate stories told. What you think the point of that was. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on that. Make sure that you like this video, and if you have not already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and turn on that post notification bell. And make sure that you share it with someone who you think may enjoy my content. Thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next week. Bye.